Courtney DeWitt. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Doing great.
Cool. Well, how was your commute in? Everything okay? No traffic?
Everything was fine. A little bit of rain, but, I'm here. I made it.
Well, I appreciate you coming and appreciate you not, having to struggle too much with the rain or getting a wreck. I certainly would feel bad about that. But yeah, we had a little drizzle this morning that came out of nowhere, and I thought we were ready for spring. And next thing you know, it's just like, oh, let's go back down to 40s at night. And I talked to our folks in Utah, and they have snow today in Utah. So it's just not letting up. But anyway, so appreciate, again, you coming here. This is going to be a fun talk. Just to let the folks out here today know what we're going to discuss. Direct contracting, bundle pricing, Xero, all of these things today. I think it's going to be a really good conversation that I think will present the audience maybe some new concepts in the marketplace outside what you think of a traditional network, right?
Yep.
But before you do that, I'd like to let the audience get a chance to know you, personal, professional background, and what led you to Xero.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll start with personal. So personal, I have a 4-year-old daughter named Emma.
Very cool.
And kind of funny, you have a 4-year-old as well.
What month was she born?
She was born in November.
November. Okay, so she's a little older. My daughter was born in February. So,
okay.
Okay, but anyways, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean
Yeah.
I was like, you have a 4-year-old too? Okay.
I know, right? And then my husband and I, we've been married for 12 years. And we live in Copper Canyons in between Flower Mound and Highland Village area.
Okay.
So I love it. We have an acre, but I live a minute from Whole Foods.
Oh, I'm super jealous of both of the things that you just said.
Yeah.
They were supposed to bring a Whole Foods up here, and, something went through in the development 2 years ago, and it's just been the shell of a Whole Foods. But you also have an acre, which I think I'm more jealous of that. But awesome. So do you guys have any livestock or anything, or is it just simply just an acre of space?
No livestock. Kind of trying to figure out the outdoor living with the pool and the patio and all that. We moved in November of 2019.
Okay.
So, we're there during the pandemic,
yes,
which was interesting, and we're just now getting to know our neighbors. We had a October hayride, and we're able to know our neighbors from that, and it's been really awesome. We love our neighborhood, and so that's kind of personal, and then can get into some other stuff as well on personal. But professional, how I learned about Xero is really I was intrigued by self-funding. I didn't know that much about it. My background is I was started out in payroll.
Okay.
Was with Paychex for about 7 years, and then moved into Benetrack, a Ben admin company, and that's where I was into the insurance world. And
were they doing actual insurance lines of coverage in addition? Okay.
No, benefit administration systems.
Okay.
Yeah, and then was with Web Benefits Design as well, a Ben admin company. And just talking with insurance consultants and having conversations and just kind of understanding how insurance works, and then also how it doesn't. Right.
I think that's more fascinating to me is how it doesn't work, because those are the problems that you can solve for people, which is fun.
Exactly. And so when I heard about Xero and what we do, and we'll get into, what we actually do, but what I felt is that it was a level of impact that I could impact people directly as a sales professional that I'd never seen before.
Yeah.
Giving the option to members at $0 cost and no risk to the employer was really intriguing to me.
Mm-hmm.
And just the opportunity to save employers money. And I just saw it as a really great opportunity that I couldn't say no to. So
that's very cool. Well, I love what you guys are doing. I actually remember years and years ago when I was calling on the Tulsa market and met Jim as well, and heard about the early kind of inception of Xero or Xero Card at the time, right?
Now Xero.
I thought it was incredible. So I can't wait to ask you some really detailed questions about that. I do want to ask though, how did you go from fashion merchandising to insurance and payroll? And tell me what that transition was like.
Great question, Spencer. Yeah, so totally random. I don't know, maybe the dress helps with the fashion merchandising, knowing that what to wear or whatever. But I actually got into fashion merchandising. I was working at the Buckle at the time.
Okay. I know the Buckle, yes.
Yep. So kind of funny. I was selling Lucky Jeans and Doc Martens. That was the beginning of my sales career. Mm-hmm. And worked there for 7 years and thought, hey, maybe I want to manage a store. So at the time, I was doing an advertising major, business minor, and then just found fashion merchandising really intriguing, and so I switched.
Okay.
I went to fashion merchandising business minor, And then after college, I discovered I actually did not want to work 7 days a week at the Buckle managing a store. So I was in the Zelle merchandising training program at the time, and I don't even think Zelle's is around right now.
I don't know. Yeah, if I'm familiar with that.
Yeah, but Diamonds. Is what it was, Diamonds for assistant buyer. So it was really cool. But as an assistant buyer, I was entering SKUs all day. And since I had a taste of sales, I wanted that again. And so I actually went into sales through telecom. And then from telecom, I went to Freeman decorating. I was in their national exhibitor sales. And was actually during their it was in the banking crisis. So I sat through 3 rounds of layoffs and a furlough. I was like, man, like I gotta do something else.
Sure.
And I miss outside sales because that's what I had done in telecom. So I actually went to Paycom, worked at Paycom for a year, and then went over to Paychex. I liked the opportunity with Paychex because there was more to the offer than just payroll. And then from Paychex is where I discovered Benetrack for the Ben admin role.
Well, so I feel like
there you go.
Yeah, you're the type of person though. You seem most, of course, attracted to the interpersonal aspect of it. The sale.
Sure.
You said outside sales. I totally get it. Right, the in-person meetings and having drinks and lunch, but it's relationship building. We talked about this on the last show. It's relationship building more than anything. So I feel like whatever it is, you probably could sell it just knowing your personality.
Thank you.
But then of course here, Xero is actually a really cool solution as well. So before we get into specifically Xero, maybe we'll talk about the space that you guys operate in, the category, if you will, and then what specific kind of solutions you guys offer in particular. So, we talk self-funding on this podcast. That's the overarching theme of this. But within that, we have administrators and we have stop-loss carriers and we have brokers and other sorts of vendors. But you guys are focusing on the network component itself, or maybe the lack of network, right? So could you help maybe the folks out there that don't know what a network is, describe what a traditional network might be, and then where you guys fit as a solution in the inverse of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I think network, I just think carrier. And the carrier has worked to create this network. So that can be a PPO, that can be a high deductible health plan, that can be an HMO. HSA could also be, a type of funding arrangement. But what's really cool about us is we don't disrupt the network.
Okay.
We actually sit on top of it as a voluntary benefit. So you can have whatever carrier you want and still have Xero.
Okay.
And the specifics procedures that we're looking at is anything that can be scheduled. So when you're thinking about Xero, and again, we're working with self-insured employers, and when you're thinking about Xero, you're thinking about anything outside of primary care. So we're never going to be your everyday doctor. And before hospitalization, we're never going to be your 7-day hospital stay. So we're looking at specific categories. We run across 44 specific categories. And then based on that, it's labs, it's imaging, it's physical therapy, it's gastroenterology, orthopedics, and then any type of general surgery.
Okay. And so you guys are working directly with the providers, right? Is that where the term direct contracting actually works? So,
Correct.
So tell me how would you define direct contracting? Because that seems to be a buzzword the last few years that people are looking at.
Sure. Absolutely. So direct contracts, overall, we have an access problem. And so what we're really doing with direct contracts is we're tying the member, we're taking out that middleman and going directly to the provider to do what's best for the member.
Okay.
So what I mean by that from a provider standpoint, what's really cool about what I do, we have great relationships with our providers and they want it to work just as much as we do. And the reason that they like us is really 3 things. We eliminate their accounts receivable, which is huge. They're not having to track down payments because it's $0, zero copay. That's where you get the name Xero.
Yeah, makes sense to me.
Right?
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Exactly. And then the second thing, we're bringing them new members. And in order to bring them new members, we have to have those employer relationships in specific areas, which we'll talk a little bit about.
Okay.
And then the third thing is we pay them within 7 days of the claim.
Okay.
So as soon as the provider bills us, we bill the employer directly.
Okay.
And then the way that we get paid for our services is very simple. We charge a 15% admin fee on the claim.
Okay.
So there's no reoccurring fee.
There's no fixed costs or anything like that?
There's no fixed costs. There's no per eligible per month. We are only billing if we're saving someone money.
Okay.
And there's nothing to really budget for because it's all coming out of the claims dollars.
Well, so it's really, I mean, it's pretty much, I wouldn't say there's no objections, right? But if you say, hey, you're not being charged up front, we're only going to be charging if and when we save you money on these certain procedures.
Sure.
And the proof will be in the pudding there, right? We'll be able to clearly show you the differential of what would have been charged versus what using with Xero card. So that's direct contracting. Again, so that would be the employer and the provider is what the direct contract would be, right? Am I understanding that correctly or no?
Well, so we're actually going out to the providers directly, and we're negotiating bundles.
Okay, so bundles. That was going to be the other part of the question. So bundle pricing, then, made that perfect segue. Thank you so much for that. Yes,
read your mind.
So bundle pricing, what would that be?
Yeah.
Then?
So when I say bundles, I mean pre-op, post-op, surgery, facility, surgeon, basically everything that you need for that one procedure. So when you're going to a hospital, they're going to charge you for the anesthesia. They're going to charge you the surgeon. They're going to charge you, basically a la carte you to death of every single line item, where we're saying this one procedure that you're getting under this one CPT code is going to be this price.
Okay. So the people actually get to know up front what it's going to cost. That seems like a fascinating and novel concept in the healthcare industry, right? But that's it's funny when you talk about that traditional network arrangement too, where you've got your copays and your coinsurance, and you go in and say, hey, I need this. And they say, well, give us your copay.
Right.
And then we'll bill you later and you'll know what your coinsurance is and the amount that your coinsurance was based on. It's just
story of our lives,
okay,
right?
I guess that I'll have to, you don't really have a choice, but you guys are offering something that's very unique. So when you set up this bundle pricing, how are you working with the providers, or how do you know up front? Are they giving you a menu or a suite of services and saying, you do this procedure, this is what it's going to cost?
Great question. So most of the providers that we're working with, they already have bundle pricing. Some of them even publish online their pricing. And so essentially we're, as much as my role is, I'm reaching out to consultants and talking with employers. I also have a provider recruiter that reaches out to the providers directly and knows those relationships.
Okay.
And what we're looking at is we're really looking at quality over quantity. We don't want every single provider in the area because that does nothing for our actual providers. So we're really looking at, first and foremost, we're looking at quality. We're making sure that they do have the quality services that they say, and we're actually vetting all of our providers through Quantros. Are you familiar with them at all?
I've heard of Quantros, but you maybe elaborate on what they are.
Yes, so Quantros is the scoring system for specific procedures.
Okay.
And what is interesting is, the big hospital systems may not have the best quality scores, but those are going to be on the carriers as far as, where you should go. So when you're dealing with Xero, you know that you're going to get three things. You're going to get cost. You know what the cost is. Mm-hmm. You're going to make sure we're going to get the quality for you. And then we're also going to make sure that it's convenient. So the heart of Xero is actually our personal health assistants. So our personal health assistants are really the heroes of the company that work with our members directly to make sure and schedule that procedure for the members. So how it works is, as much as we are this cool healthcare company, we're also really a data company as well as far as our technology. So we have our own proprietary software called Xero, where the members will, they can either call or they can chat with our personal health assistants. And then from there, all of our providers will have access to that software. And then we actually survey all of our members after the fact. And I know Jennifer talked a little bit about this for the Net Promoter Score. Our Net Promoter Score is 94, which is unheard of in healthcare.
Well, it's funny. I'm becoming aware of this. I've heard people, our Net Promoter Score is great. I'm like, well, oh, cool. I don't know what that means. Right. But awesome. Good for you. So it's funny. I've been introduced to this now twice about what. So I presume that's a really high score, right?
Yes, it's right up there with Tesla and Starbucks. Who doesn't want to drive their Tesla?
And drink their Starbucks while they're doing it. That's awesome. So that's very cool. I guess that's one of those things where there's actually quantifiable, hey, we're doing a good job, and here's the proof. The members are happy. The folks that are actually utilizing our services are happy. So, you're going to these providers, though, and, you're negotiating with them, of course, to do these arrangements. And you don't want everybody, of course, like you said, because you don't want to maybe dilute the value and the quality of that. What is their reception to this idea? Is it still too novel for them, or are they coming around more to this versus that traditional network?
Sure. I mean, it depends on the provider, but the biggest thing is they're seeing it as an aggregator of cash-paying patients. So if you were to go and you see you need a knee replacement, and you say, hey, here's $30,000 for my knee replacement. they're not going to turn you down. They're probably going to give you a good deal. So essentially what we're doing is we're negotiating whatever that cash price would be. And providers are really catching on to it. It gets their name out there. And also you have to realize from a provider standpoint, they have business development professionals just like you and I going out to employers. So a lot of these providers were already having direct contracts with the employers. We're just giving them more members.
So you're acting as almost like a broker's broker and helping people get through the door.
In a sense,
for the provider, a provider's provider, maybe I'd say.
Exactly.
And is it, this concept I'm familiar with, again, covering Oklahoma, for whatever reason, it seems like the idea of bundle pricing seemed to have come somewhat out of the Oklahoma City and Tulsa market. Dr. Keith Smith is there, and it is. I presume there's a relationship between
there
Jim.
Is,
okay.
yes.
Is this maybe what triggered some of the original inception of Xero?
Sure. So our CEO of our company, Jim Milloway, James Milloway, some may know him as James, but goes by Jim. He started the company. He had the insurance background, so he knew, the insurance. He also knew the problems with insurance. And then our chief medical officer, also infectious disease doctor, Dr. Stan Swartz, was the one that had all the provider relationships. He understood additional fees, money that was built in, all of the bureaucracy that goes along with the billing. So Jim was the insurance guy. Stan was the provider guy that understands the payments, and I'll talk a little bit more about our data. And then we have our chief technology officer, Wim DePrill, that's actually located in Denver, Colorado, that does all of our technology. So I think I'd share this, but as much as we are this cool healthcare company, we also are technology company as well. So we have our own proprietary software, Xero for the scheduling. We have our own member software for our members to chat, to call in. And then we also have our own software for the employers for all the reporting and everything that they need at their fingertips. But what's really cool about us is proof of concept. If we can get the claims data, we can actually look at claims data and we can compare that to what our pricing is. And we put together what we call our opportunity analysis, where we can see that the average savings for the employer is anywhere from 40 to 50%.
Okay. And on those certain types of procedures that fit in your wheelhouse.
Yes.
So, I mean, I think anybody that really understands the way these arrangements are set up realizes that in the traditional way of the payment model, there is a lot of kind of I don't want to say pork, but there's a lot of profit. There's a lot of margin that's built into these contracts that most people aren't aware of outside of the system. And I know one particular methodology that's tried to attack this from a different angle is reference-based pricing.
Yes.
So how does that fit or not fit in your model? I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, reference-based pricing is actually just works alongside what we do. They're not a competitor of ours in any way. So really what we do is we eliminate that balance bill. And again, for us, we're a voluntary benefit. So the member can either choose to use it or not. We tell them, if you have a scheduled procedure, call us. And then for the reference-based pricing, what they're doing is they're negotiating after the fact, where we're negotiating before the fact.
Okay.
Right?
So are they compatible, like you said? So they are compatible.
Two different things, really.
Two different things, though.
Yep.
Okay. So, in Weston, do you know what reference-based pricing is? I feel like I want to pull Weston in. Okay. So I use that term. Would you care to help tackle what reference-based pricing?
I'll let you start, and then I'll add.
I understand every word individually, but not maybe
not when those three words are combined. I have no idea what that means. So reference-based pricing is best that I understand it. I actually have a gentleman coming on in a couple weeks to really go deep on reference-based pricing. So reference-based pricing, Weston in the audience, is the reference itself is Medicare, the payment rate that Medicare actually allows for certain procedures, certain facilities, locations, whatnot. So there's a standard at which they know what Medicare is paying for these procedures, and the reference-based pricing is basing their payment methodology on whatever that Medicare payment rate is.
Yep.
So that's about as far as I go. I know it's usually somewhere 150 to 200% of Medicare, and then I'm probably going to botch the rest of it. But all it is really a benchmark for which to pay, because oftentimes there's incredible variance between carriers and incredible variance between providers for the same exact procedure. So at least we know a standard.
Don't get overpriced, or so that they have some sort of standard to follow.
Yes.
So they're not just kind of, that cost
Yep.
$500,000 when Medicare is only charging $1,500 or something.
Exactly. It was only willing to pay or
Yeah.
reimburse. So you're exactly right. I mean, that's awesome. I mean, I wanted to pull you in, man, so we don't just talk all this jargon. So how did I do, though?
You did
is
great.
that okay?
I was just going to share with Weston, though, most people don't know that they have options. They get a bill, and that's it. And so, I think people spend a lot of money telling people they don't have options.
I've seen a lot of people with, depending on their bill, that they will get an itemized list of their medical expenses, and all of a sudden their medical expenses are cut by 80% because they're just ignorant of the fact of that, they don't have to be paying this much.
Well, that's what you would call the discount.
Yeah.
That's what, so that, these carriers will sell you on, we have 50% or 60% discounts, and it's really discounts off of whatever they want to bill and whatever astronomical amounts.
Because
so
you have no idea what they're charging.
Exactly.
You're just kind of I guess they fixed me and now I'm
I'm good and I owe them money is what all you know. Yeah. So
and they can just take advantage of that.
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of how it works. I reference-based pricing, RBP, I hear value-based pricing as well is kind of similar. But so you guys are congruent or at least synergistic with that model.
Yeah, we still see an average savings about 40%, even with reference-based pricing or RBP. So, for us, if I hear someone has reference-based pricing, I'm like, great, let's look at the data. Let's see what we can do for them. The main thing when I hear reference-based pricing is I hear that employer or that consultant is innovative and, they care about the savings. Mm-hmm. So that they love Xero and they want to do everything they can to help that employer.
Well, yeah, I would think from your perspective, they're almost a built-in audience because they already understand something that's a couple levels removed from fully insured, and they're going, we're already receptive to that idea. So what's the next iteration of that, right?
Yeah.
But so talk to me, though. I know it obviously doesn't work for everybody. You mentioned they do need to be self-funded, right? Is that
correct?
So what is the reasoning behind that? I'd like to understand that.
Sure. Yeah, it just has to do with the flexibility of payment. So fully insured, you're just paying the premium. So there's no flexibility in payment. That next level up, that level funded group, it really kind of depends on the funding arrangement for level funded. But when it comes to the payments, it's more premium related than self-funded. So when they are self-funded, they have that flexibility to kind of do what they need. I've heard the comparison before, and I kind of liked it. When you're self-funded, you're owning your house versus renting your house.
I think that's a perfect way to summarize it.
So when you own your house, you can do what you need to do, right? So it's the same type of thing with self-funding. We do have some TPAs that say, hey, we're level funded. We want to make this work with you. And sure, let's talk about it. Let's figure out how that works. So we are flexible. I mean, from our end, we'll work with anybody that wants to work with us.
Sure.
But just having those conversations and seeing what all does that involve.
Well, is there an ideal candidate, though? Obviously, prerequisite would be self-funded or level funded if it's with the TPA arrangement, but is there a type of employer or a size of employer that tends to benefit the most?
Yeah, so we usually find geographically clustered in specific areas since we're not everywhere, and I can talk a little bit more about that, but sweet spot 500 to 2,500 lives, and we actually base it on number of members, so that's employee plus dependents. We have employers that are smaller than that. We have employers that are larger than that. Typically, the big national providers, 25,000 to 30,000, may not be a good fit. It just kind of depends on that geography, on where they're located.
Was it only geography based, or is there something at that size where are they doing some of this in-house themselves? Or?
They could be.
Okay.
They could be. I mean, a lot of those might have direct contracts that they're doing themselves, so it's not really our bread and butter per se. We really gravitate towards that mid-market.
Well, it's funny, I think there's a repetitive theme here. Most of the folks that I talk to are focused on that middle market space. It seems like an enormous area of opportunity, but it's maybe been an underserved market in terms of self-funding for a number of years. So I think almost universally speaking, the majority of the folks that I talk to and are in this space are focused on that. Like there's so much opportunity there, but those are also the types of employers that are starting to look for the next step in the process of really taking control back of their healthcare spend. So well, that makes sense. So, is there anybody though that's not a good fit? You mentioned the jumbo employers are maybe below a certain threshold, but are there other situations outside of being fully insured where it's just, this isn't going to work? Geographic, you said?
Yeah, great question. Actually, high deductible health plan with HSA based based on the first dollar roll.
Okay.
So that's
Can you explain that more though?
I can.
Yeah, please. I'd like to hear.
So the HSA regulation is the first dollar has to be spent on the HSA. So for us, because we're $0, zero deductible, there's no way to actually bill for that. So we do have employers that will do a high deductible health plan without an HSA.
Oh, okay.
So we are seeing some creativity around that. We also have employers that say, hey, we've had the HSA, but we didn't know about Xero. Like, we'd rather do Xero than the HSA because it's $0, zero copay, whereas the HSA, the employers are still paying for it.
Okay.
And then we have some employers or TPAs even that say, hey, we want to add the HSA members as they become eligible.
Okay.
And that may work as well.
So as they become eligible, what would
That
transition
has
them
to
be
do
eligible?
based on the actual deductibles that they hit, based on the individual or the family contributions that go into the HSA.
Okay, well, that's interesting. Yeah, and that's actually something I wouldn't have considered as an impediment, but I guess it does make sense. You know, there's all sorts of laws and regulations of how you can spend your own money, but with tax savings and whatnot, it makes sense that there's going to be some steerage or control there. Is there, people love numbers. Maybe it's just me, but I presume a lot of people like, I want to quantify this. All of this sounds great, but is there a specific situation where it really is best? Or is there an outcome that you guys have been able to derive that was just, oh, wow, that's a feather in our cap of what we accomplished?
That's the opportunity analysis. That's really the magic of what we do. It's one thing to say, hey, I can save you money. It's another thing to take your data and actually put together the information to show you I can save you 56% on your medical claim spend. Now, when you're thinking of what we're doing, we're about an average of 20% of the total medical claim spend. Okay, so when you're looking at the total medical claim spend, you'll see about 20% of that is the amount that we can impact. And then from that amount that we can impact, we're about 40 to 50% less than that number.
Okay.
Makes sense?
Is there a particular procedure, though, that you see is like, oh, we're always saving a lot of dollars on X, Y, or Z? I'd love to know, or is it too variable to really say?
So what I can guarantee is cost containment. So what we do is we look at the CPT code, we look at the high end, we look at the average, we look at what our cost is. And what's so interesting is I'll look at, like, say, a blood panel, and I'll see that blood panel at $6. And then I'll see it at $1,300. And then I'll see our price at $5. And so what we're really doing is we're guaranteeing that it's going to be the same price every single time.
Okay.
And that you're not following your doctor down the hall just because, in my instance, my doctor is Baylor for my primary care. Well, they're automatically going to walk me down the hall to Touchstone because Touchstone is Baylor owns them. And so when I'm talking to that doctor, I say, hey, can I go anywhere? And the doctor's going to say yes, begrudgingly. And then at that point, I would call Xero, and I would reach out to a personal health assistant, and I would say, hey, my doctor says that I didn't need an MRI, and I'm walking them through that process.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because I think there's a lot of cool ideas out there that work in theory, but it all is still dependent upon the member actually utilizing that service or knowing it's even available. So, messaging, I'm sure, is important, marketing to those folks, but you mentioned call, maybe is there an app or something they can utilize as well? So how do they get to you as quickly as possible to help solve the
absolutely.
problem?
Yeah, so we do have call, we do have a chat feature, so it's a live chat, and then they just let us know, first and foremost, I'm Spencer, I'm located in Dallas, Texas, I'm looking for an MRI. So the personal health assistants are really the soul of what we do. We could not do what we do without them, right? So they're the front line to talk with our members. And then from that point, they'd say, hey, we have, 14 imaging centers in your area. We'll go ahead and let them know that you're coming, scheduled through the software, and then your cost is always zero. So again, just making it nice and simple for the member.
Yeah, that can be something that happens same day as well. Like, yeah. Okay. So you gave me a location. Oh, that's cool. That's 2 minutes away. They can drive there and it's going to work, seamlessly like that. Right?
Just depends on the scheduling of the company.
Sure.
I mean, the MRI don't have to get it that same day. You're probably going to 24 hours or whatever. But yes, it is available, when that scheduling is. And again, we do all the surveys to make sure that the member experience is on par are, and that's where we get that 94 as far as the Net Promoter Score. So
what are those other 6? Like, where is the rest of the 6 points? Like,
so
it's probably one person that's made a stink or something.
The surveys, you have to get a 9 or a 10 on every single. Jen did an awesome job of explaining Net Promoter Score.
She knew all about it.
That was
like,
the
that's
best
cool. That's
definition
awesome.
I've ever heard. I was like writing notes on it. But yeah, that's how it works. If you have to get a 9 and a 10 in every single survey.
Well, what is, I know obviously I brought you on because I feel like you guys are doing something really cool, and it is working. And Xero started how long ago? Like 7 years?
2016.
2016. Okay,
yes.
So 6 years. Well, 5 years if I could do math. But what certainly I'm sure there's been challenges along the way, right? We talked about it doesn't fit for every group. I'm sure you hear all sorts of objections under the sun. What sort of resistance are you getting as you're starting to try to shape behavior in this space? I'm sure not everybody's saying yes overnight. So tell me about some of the challenges.
I think the biggest challenge is taking the carrier for their word. I get so many questions of, you're not going to save me money. Blue Cross Blue Shield has the best discounts in town. I'm like, that's weird, because I just saved 60% on opportunity analysis that we looked at.
Yeah.
So, from our standpoint, if we can get the data and we can do that opportunity analysis, the story really speaks for it in themselves. But there are a lot of people out there that the BUCAs, Blue Cross Blue Shield, United Healthcare, Cigna, and Aetna, known as the BUCAs, as we all know, but just breaking it down for everybody that doesn't.
I think that anybody that's listening to this podcast, I think BUCAs are mentioned all the time. It's funny. It's like we throw around BUCA all the time, and it's like, oh, yeah, that actually means something, and maybe not everybody understands the BUCA. But, also we don't necessarily want to position them always as, we're up against the BUCAs, but, they're so big, and it's what the majority of people understand. And so they have done a good job of kind of shaping perception in the marketplace of what works and what doesn't. And so you present a new idea and they're like, well, that's not how my traditional one works.
Exactly.
And, here's why that doesn't work. So I think I also am fascinated by folks that telling a great story, but you're also up against headwinds that of people's behavior over a long period of time as well.
It's philosophy, and it's just, we get so many members that it's too good to be true. And so our customer success manager, he's changed his title to professional myth buster.
Hey, that's probably what he does most of the time.
Right? Yeah. So he loves it. And there's just, so many testimonies of members of this. It's too good to be true. One of my favorite examples is a member had called in. She was trying to get a surgery for her son, and it was $4,000 copay or deductible that they had to pay, and called in. We were able to get a letter of agreement. So we were able to get it through $0 to her. So she saved that $4,000. And then to put it in perspective, that entire procedure was $3,600.
Oh, wow.
So you can't imagine what that procedure actually cost.
Yes.
If it wouldn't have gone through us. So,
jeez.
I mean.
And what type of procedure was that again, you said? Or I don't know if you
it was like a visceral, he said he Googled it, and
he's like,
yeah, I'm good.
That's what, there's in stop loss that became aware a couple years ago of a disease. It was like hereditary angioedema, but it's kind of hard to say, and I had to practice saying it, but HAE is what most people say, right? Like these medical technical definitions are so out there that you're just like, let's give it an acronym, right? That's funny. So I know obviously you're on the bleeding edge of this, right? We talked about some headwinds and resistance, but there's probably going to be a point of critical mass that this is going to catch on, and you're not feeling that same sort of resistance. Is this something, or maybe what's the next step of this, right? Like, this is working, right? This is working great.
Sure.
Is there another kind of problem that's tangential to what you're doing that also you guys might be looking at solving, or is out there?
I mean, just to put it into perspective, healthcare is a $4 trillion business. Right? There are $4 trillion reasons why people want this to fail.
Yeah.
Right? They are comfortable with that traditional healthcare and just that opportunity to step out of the box. But I mean, COVID's done so much. And even before COVID, more and more people are gravitating towards things that are easy and convenient. You need a taxi, you need a ride, you're calling Uber.
Yep.
I mean, a couple years ago, my cousin was using Uber, and I'm like, what do you mean? It's like a black car? Like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah, and like some
You know?
person just picks you up on the corner,
Right,
right?
like,
okay, that sounds safe, right?
I'm confused,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And then you have DoorDash. We have Amazon, of course. You know, Airbnb. I mean, most people are looking at Airbnb instead of hotels. So healthcare is such an old way of thinking. Healthcare has to change, and what we're calling that shift, it's called a member-first economy.
Okay.
And what that member-first economy, it's a seismic shift, and what that member-first economy is it's giving options.
Yes.
You don't have to take that first price. You don't have to go to that doctor. You have options. And what Xero is guaranteeing is that if you have an MRI, if you have something that we cover, it's $0, zero copay. So what's next for us is really, just making sure that we're providing our providers with the members, that we're talking to employers in the area. So for here in Texas, it's Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, and Austin. So primarily all of the metropolitan areas, and then Oklahoma, started the company in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And then Kansas City, and so there's a couple other areas as well. So I don't want to get into the details of it.
Yeah, but is it it's something that is still kind of matriculating out
It
right
is,
to
yes.
the rest of the country, right?
Right.
And I always loved that the fact that the epicenter of a lot of these new ideas is Oklahoma.
Yeah,
and it's
random.
Funny, but it's funny too because I would call in that territory as a sales rep, and it's like, oh, yeah, they'll give you Oklahoma too. And you're like, okay, cool. And then you go and find out, wow, there's actually some great ideas, and there's a lot of self-funded groups out here. And, it's just, whatever perception or whatnot, it was cool. Like, oh, they're coming up with solutions that the rest of the country is going to adopt eventually as this novel idea of like, oh, I get to know what I pay ahead of time. And I get to know how much something costs when they give me a procedure. It's just, you would think that wouldn't be considered such a novel idea, but we're such a backwards industry, I'd say. And that's kind of the reason why I'm so passionate about self-funding is if you are self-funded, the number of options, like you said, are nearly infinite to solve your problems. And you get to know what your problem's in because you can also see your own data. And so it's just trying to make sense of everything that's out there to bring it together into something that's cohesive for that particular group, that fits that particular group's problems. Yeah. It makes, I don't know, I get
passionate.
I do too. I didn't want to go on a soapbox, but I definitely get passionate about it as well. So, kind of wrap things up. I know we had a great conversation. We talked Xero. We talked a little of the future. If anybody, listens to this, and, I never know if anybody listens all the way through or not, but if anybody
listened.
Well, thank you. Do. I think I did see, there was a couple folks that did, but no, I just joking aside, what is the thing that you would say, let's wrap this up in terms of what would I leave folks listening to this today? What do I want them to know? Or whether big picture or small picture, what would you like to say?
I think the biggest thing is you have options. And I know that self-funding is not for everybody, right? There are risks associated with it. But I love what Jennifer said on, don't be afraid to fail. Take a risk or you'll never know. So adding on to that, what I love about what Xero does is the member-first economy, putting members first, and we're nothing if we don't have that right. The personal health assistants are the soul of what we do, and just be open to hearing about opportunities to make a change, and changing the status quo, because, life is all about taking chances and making, taking risk, and you're so great at being able to educate people about that. So listen to Spencer.
Well, yes, we'll leave it at that. Listen to me. No, so Courtney, I really, again, appreciate you joining me. This is fascinating conversation. I think I actually selfishly enjoy bringing folks on that do things that I'm interested in that I don't know that much about. Right. And so my hope is that other people gain some value in listening to these types of discussions as well. So really appreciate it. Very nice to see you, and thanks for joining.
Thank you. Have a great Friday and a great weekend.
You too. Bye.